What's happening? I must find out why Toni cooled down on me. Everything was fine. I switched his laptop on and read the last message. Toni wrote to a guy he was cool, and one could go nuts about this. What? This can't be. Hi, I'm Caroline, which means queen, but I barely make ends meet. I can get a job after the music college. If I don't succeed here, I don't know what else to do. To my awe, the cafe manager said I was accepted for a probation. Yes! One day, a guy sat at my table and ordered a lunch. I didn't pay attention at first, but when he left a $10 tip, I was so surprised. I'd never got such a big tip before. He came the next day, and again, there were $10. If this continues, I'll be rich, move to New York and record my first album of covers. I'd waited for this guy all next shift, but he never came, and I felt sad. I should go home on foot. Suddenly I saw him with a huge bunch of flowers. Is it for me? The guy introduced himself as Toni and offered to walk me home. Soon we started dating. My life changed drastically. Have you ever had this? A long run of bad luck and suddenly everything transforms. Once, Toni said he had a serious talk for me and asked to come, but I didn't have money for the taxi. It'll take forever to get to you, dear, so let's have it another time. He immediately said he'd pay for the car, and that evening I heard a proposal to move in together. Yes, Toni, it's so cool. Suddenly, he confused and asked my help paying for the flat at first, while he'd search an extra job. What? Are we friends to share the rent or what? If so, let's each find a rich man who will sponsor us. Toni laughed and soon rented us a posh flat. His side job helped. Those were happy days. We talked all night long, cooked together, walked. We had so much in common, only the gifts waned. Do you not love me anymore? I don't feel like a girl without presents. Toni lashed out and said there was no money for that. But you're a man, solve the money-making problem. Or why are we together after all? What I loved about him was his determination and ability to act. Soon he got yet another project, and we even started saving money for my first album. That was a dream. Each fortnight I counted the money, happy the banknotes were adding. But one day I was barely able to do so. The dollars blurred. Toni brought me to a hospital right away, and it turned out I needed an emergency surgery. Toni paid for everything, and in a week my vision was back fully. I could count our money box again, but after paying for the medical care it was almost empty, and it saddened me so much. Toni, you know I dreamed to move to New York and score my first album there, but at this pace we won't have anything. Toni became sad and went to his room, and in a month we'd moved to New York due to his new overtime job. Moreover, he assured me soon our finances would improve dramatically and we'd be able to afford way more. You're a marvel, my dear. Toni worked day and night, and I cooked and rehearsed in the studio. Several weeks passed, and Toni became limp. He barely touched his food and didn't notice me. Gifts and nice words vanished. Are you ill? Toni replied he was fine, but I knew something was wrong. Did he not love me anymore? I needed to buy a seductive rope and fuel the passion. But all was in vain. Toni just passed me and hit the sack. No! That's abnormal! Something's wrong! While Toni was asleep, I took his laptop and immediately saw his last message. He's so cool, it's just mind-blowing. One can go nuts. Toni wrote this to a guy with a nickname Loverboy. No, that's out of question. He's not gay, but I should check, just in case. Next night, I took him to a nightclub. Posh babe was dancing right in front of us, but Toni didn't bat an eye. What's the matter with him? I didn't know how to start the convo and thought about it the entire rehearsal. And when I came home, I saw Toni wearing an Elton John t-shirt. Where had you got it? You never wore such stuff before. Toni shrugged and asked to schedule him a pedicure. What? I was speechless. Now it all makes sense. How haven't I guessed before? He was more like a friend all this time. Sometimes people are not what they try to pretend. Do you agree? Write in the comments. Toni, I don't know how to tell you, but I feel our relationship is not like it was. Let's go to a family therapist? To my surprise, he agreed, and soon we were there. When the psychologist asked why we came, Toni suddenly claimed he wanted to break up with me. What? It is me who wants to break up, cause you're a secret gay and have been lying to me all this time. Yes, I know everything. I've read your messages where you talk of some cool guy who's so mind-blowing. And what about the pedicure and the shirt and the club ignorance? The psychologist asked me to stop and Toni to continue. And then he said that before moving to New York, he entered a crypto trading society which made fortunes on the deals. And then they opened training and Toni gave them almost all our money, investing the rest in the crypto project. It was mind-blowing as the coin had to give huge profit. Soon it turned out the project was scam and the traders were typical frauds. Toni was secretly saving this money for my album and was left with nothing. I was in total shock and hadn't found anything better to say than, "But what about the pedicure?" He replied it was only an ingrown toenail disturbing him. Suddenly I realized it. Toni, you're the best man in the world, and I'm just a venal fool, obsessed with money and royal life. Forgive me, honey. Toni hugged me, but I'd glimpsed in the mirror him winking to the therapist and her blowing him a kiss. What? Like the video? Give us a like and subscribe to our channel. This inspires us to create new videos for you.
My chest ached under the bandages, the head itched under the wig, and sweat ran down in my legs. Heck, and I need someone to like me like this? I could almost hear Anne and Jessica laughing behind me. Anne and Jessica are my friends. Once we came up with a game to save ourselves from boredom. Before the new year, we draw lots and the loser performs tasks from her friends all year long. But it's not just a game. The stakes are always high. I lost this time. The girls will give me a hard time. Anne will want revenge for the time when I forbade her to shave legs for 3 months. And Jessica for the challenge in which she would go all the beach season with a false belly. They couldn't handle it. But what they came up with was too much. My friends wanted me to seduce 30 gay men in a month. I can't even make straight people fall in love with me because I look not as feminine as my friends. And I've always been shy about my heavy build, although I have to be a guy to seduce a guy, so that should help me. I asked the girls to change the task. And in the end, we decided that I should not get 30 gay men fall in love with me, but one, but not someone, but Peter Luckins himself, a famous stylist. The girls added that a normal kiss would not be enough. I needed to get a declaration of love. I was given 7 days. Everything works out. Anne will give me her Mini Cooper. And Jessica will give me a trip to Bali. But if I lose, I will say goodbye to the savings I collected for 5 years. Of course, I accepted the challenge. I love difficult problems, whether it's math or relationships with a gay man. Peter used to relax at the most fashionable club in town. It's very difficult for ordinary people to get there, so the girls and I pretended to be kitchen workers. We needed to get in somehow. Anne took it upon herself, and while she was flirting with the security guard, Jessica and I slipped inside. We changed in a bathroom. The girls put cool outfits on, and I wore trousers and a shirt that I begged from my cousin. I looked terrible, and was beginning to regret getting involved. I tried to wear dresses and skirts to look a little more feminine. And now I saw a guy in the mirror, but a challenge is a challenge. I hope that this knob Peter would like me at least. At the club, Anne joked that I looked good as a guy. And if Peter sent me away, I could walk her home. Dream on. Peter was standing at the bar. My knees were weak. I'd never been the first to meet a guy, let alone dressed like this. I came over to Peter and brokenly offered him a cocktail. Then I realized with horror that I was speaking in my normal voice. I hope he didn't hear it. It was noisy. Then I cleared my throat and repeated the phrase. Peter gave me a cold look. I bet he hears it a lot. Peter said cocktails were for girls, and real guys drank pure absinthe. Like Van Gogh, I blurted out. But Peter was interested. He suddenly asked in which city Van Gogh held his first exhibition. In Paris, I answered without hesitation, in 1901. He didn't seem to expect the right answer. I felt elated. Art was my main passion. I was always stuck in art galleries. But suddenly, Peter interrupted me, saying that I should pay attention not only to the artists, but also to my own style. He turned away. He wasn't going to continue the conversation, and I had to leave. It's okay, this was just the first attempt. I wasn't going to give up. During the night, I made a plan. I created an account for my new identity, John, and followed Peter on all social media networks. Fortunately, narcissistic upstairs like him always mark their favorite places. This time, I asked my cousin for stylish clothes. I said that I was going to play in a play. I spent the whole day trying to catch Peter's eye, but every time it went wrong. They wouldn't let me go to the gym without running shoes and a change of clothes. In the supermarket, Peter was concentrating on picking out food. I tried to talk to him, but he didn't even look at me. My plan was falling apart. In desperation, I decided to throw myself under the wheels of his car, but an old lady caught me by the arm, and his car eventually drove past me. I didn't know what else to do. Out of grief, I wandered into the nearest diner. The pursuit was very exhausting, and I was hungry. But just as I took a bite, Peter appeared in the doorway. He looked at me in surprise and took off his headphones. That's why he didn't hear me. He asked me what I was doing there. I was just trying to chew on my hot dog to answer him. Peter was clearly amused. In my excitement, I forgot everything I could talk about. Peter realized this and started to leave. He was wearing a t-shirt with the logo of a famous basketball team. And to keep him, I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. I invited him to their next match. Peter looked at me incredulously. After all, the next match was today, and he couldn't get tickets. And of course, if so, he would come. The ticket office at the stadium laughed at me. Who buys tickets 3 hours before the legendary match? I even tried to bribe the usher, but there was no chance. There were no tickets. I moved nervously in the crowd of fans. Maybe someone had extra ticket. Finally, I found a person who agreed to help me. I was saved. But as soon as I took out the money, a handcuff snapped on my hand. He turned out to be an undercover cop. And he thought I was a dealer, as if that wasn't enough. That's how I ended up with the police. I had to ask my cousin to pick me up. He was shocked, but I liked that it was part of the preparation for the play. I was free, but this did not solve the main problem. There was an hour left before the match. I still could not find tickets. The only one who could help was Jessica. She had connections everywhere. I took a desperate step, called and said that I would refuse a trip to Bali if she got 2 tickets. Half an hour later, I had the invitation cards for Peter and me. I met him at the stadium, and I met Anne there. I didn't know she was a basketball fan, but Anne said she loved matches and asked for a ticket from someone too. While I was buying tickets, I was teased and almost exposed. Some guys in the queue told me, "Hey kid, your clothes are tight like women's. Fashion show is in the other building." I had to leave as soon as possible. When I came back, Anne was sitting next to Peter, and my seat was 2 rows up. It seemed that Anne was ready to do anything to keep her car. After saying goodbye to Coke and hot dog, I switched with a man and got a seat next to Peter. Anne was furious with me. She quipped that I'd done the right thing by giving the hot dog away. After all, the last time I threw up on the Ferris wheel on the people in the booth below, I almost burned with shame. But Peter replied that he had been in the same situation. He put his arm around me. After the match, Peter offered to accompany me. We were walking along the embankment and I even thought for a second that we could become an ordinary couple. Strangely, I felt feminine around him, even in my male form. This never happened to me before. And then, a gull flew over my ear. The bird brushed my wig with its wing. Peter shooed it away. A real night. I hurried to fix it so that Peter wouldn't see. I was so sick of it. Peter was a great guy. I wanted so much to tell him the truth, but there were 3 days left before the end of the challenge. But did I want to win by lying? We exchanged numbers and Peter accepted my offer of dinner. Did he really like me? I mean, John in my performance. But the next day at the restaurant, I waited for him for an hour. He never came. He didn't answer on the phone either. Decided to bail? But why? I ran to his house and started banging on the door. I saw a light in the window and shouted that I wasn't leaving until we talked. Peter opened it, but told me to get out. He knew about our dirty argument and told him who I really was. I didn't deny it and took off my wig. I tried to explain that it was no longer about the car or the islands. I really liked Peter. With him, I finally felt like a real girl. But he wouldn't listen to me. He slammed the door. I had never felt so bad. I decided to get out of this game. I met with the girls in the cafe and told them about my decision. Anne said I just bailed, and it was disgusting. You know what's disgusting? Setting up a friend. Me. I told Anne everything. At that moment, I asked myself how I even agreed to this game of other people's feelings. And then Jessica suddenly shouted that I was scared because of the money. That's all. I was so uncomfortable, I couldn't even say anything. I just picked up my bag and left the cafe. That night, I went to the bar alone for the first time in years. And then I saw Peter. Here? In this bar? I didn't understand. My thoughts were all jumbled up. Peter came up to me and told me that I had won the argument and even took my hand. I couldn't breathe with excitement. I said there was no more argument and Peter could go. I didn't need his pelts at all. But Peter said he was really in love with me because of his work. He was often mistaken for gay and he did not deny it. He didn't want them to pry into his private life, but now Peter couldn't hide his feelings. He liked my sincerity and resourcefulness, and it turned out that men's shirts were very suitable for me. We talked all evening. It was perfect. And then Peter offered a new challenge. Which of us would eat more hot dogs in 5 minutes? The bid was a marriage proposal. Well, boy, challenge accepted. Waiter, 50 hot dogs. And quickly,